Chapter 1954, Sealing the Crow of Doom. Serial and Midolin's abilities complemented each other perfectly, preventing the Crow of Doom from unleashing its full power. It screeched as it fought, completely unafraid of any damage its opponents inflicted on it. "Stop, don't hurt it too badly. Once this thing starts to break down, we'll be in trouble." Serial did not forget to warn Midolin. Once the Crow of Doom entered its second form, it would be very difficult for the two of them to effectively suppress it. If it entered the third stage, everyone would die here today. "I understand." Midolin immediately changed his fighting style, twisting the blade of his sword and using the broad blade of his two-handed sword to clash with the Crow of Doom's demon-swallowing spear. Olive seemed oblivious to everything happening on the battlefield, reciting everything recorded in the Dead Sea Scrolls. As he recited, the light of the Dead Sea Scrolls began to envelop his entire body. At first, it only illuminated the ruins, but soon it surged in all directions like a tide. One after another, chains of holy energy shot out from the flying pages. Clang! The chains shot toward the crow in the sky. At this moment, the crow had already been suppressed by the combined attack of the two angels of the sun and moon. No matter how it tried to separate and collide, it was difficult to escape the entanglement of the two. It seemed to sense something repulsive, and when it saw the runic chains emitting holy light enveloping it, for the first time, it chose to flee from this area. But at this moment, it was too late to leave. Serial's sea of moonlight surged in the void, creating ripples. The moonlight seemed to have substance, becoming translucent and viscous, entangling his body in midair and making his every move difficult. Trying to escape? You don't have a chance now. Midolin swung his great sword, each blow filled with the vigorous power of the sun, and a sacred light burst forth in the sky, leaving the oppressive Crow of Doom with no time to dodge. At this moment, the runic chains covering the sky had sealed off the surrounding area and were binding the Crow of Doom's body. The Crow of Doom was still fighting fiercely, swinging his demon-devouring spear, leaving behind a trail of afterimages, and a black storm raging around him. Clang! Clang! The demon-devouring spear collided with the great sword and the rune chains, making a deafening sound, but those rune chains had a special magical power that made them impossible to be slashed, and they were shrinking smaller and smaller. With the Crow of Doom at the center, the entire area was covered with such rune chains. Clang! A chain broke through his gun, bound his arm, and then tightened like a python, wrapping around his arm and up his body. The Crow of Doom widened his eyes and tried to break free, but found that he couldn't. Midolin and Serial continued to suppress him, watching as the Crow of Doom was engulfed in a sea of rune chains. Olive stood on the ruins in his red robe, devoutly reciting the Dead Sea Scrolls, and finally, the endless light completely engulfed the Crow of Doom. The demon has been successfully exorcised. Serial and Midolin exchanged glances, their faces lit up with joy. They were extremely proud to have successfully sealed away a lord of the netherworld. However, Olive was not as excited as they were. He knew that sealing away the Crow of Doom was only temporary. It was Mammon's illusory incarnation, and even Mammon, who was seriously injured and in a deep sleep, was not someone they could offend. This suppression would not last long, unless the book in his hand was the original version of the Dead Sea Scrolls. He couldn't even seal the Crow of Doom inside the book, only bind him to this place. Snap! Olive closed the book in his hand, looked at the Crow of Doom sealed in the sky by the magnificent chains of holy light, and said to the others, "We have to get out of here as soon as possible." He knew very well what he needed to do next. Find Mammon's sealed location. But before that, he needed to find someone. Chaos, the one wielding the Spear of Longinus. Only with the Spear of Longinus could he complete the final sealing ceremony. All of this was the guidance of His Holiness the Pope, and there could be no mistake. Looking at the Knights Templar and Raven soldiers still fighting around him, Olive put down the book and drew his holy sword. Judgment Day. The holy flames will burn away all the darkness in the world. A raging fire gushed out from the tip of the sword and spread in all directions toward the endless wasteland. The Knights Templar were unharmed, but the Crow soldiers were instantly reduced to ashes with a wail as soon as they came into contact with the flames. With just one strike, all the Crow soldiers at the scene were easily wiped out. Serial and Middelin returned respectfully and bowed their heads before him in submission. "Let's go." Olive turned and looked in the distance. "Our Father in heaven has shown us the way." The Knights Templar came behind him, their bodies covered in blood, but their eyes still determined as they followed him forward. 1 month earlier, Li Changgong arrived in the East Sea region and met with his family elder, Li Guangxiao. Now, the entire Huashu Kingdom, the Jiangnan region, or more precisely, Zhangyi's Tianhai City, and the Xinjiang region were the strongest. No matter what happened in the country, the leaders of these two sides were respected and had the highest say. Although other regions understood this difference in strength, they were not necessarily completely convinced. For example, the East Sea region, which had the strongest navy. The strength of the mutants in the East Sea region was not ranked in the top 3 in the Huashu Kingdom. This was because most of their mutants were in the navy and could only display their full strength in the ocean. For example, Black Tortoise was unable to participate in other land wars. If it weren't for this, the East Sea region would definitely not have been absent from the Battle of Fremons. However, putting this issue aside and simply talking about armed forces, they are the strongest in the entire Huashu Kingdom. In the maritime realm, they have been confronting the world's strongest navy for many years, which has cultivated their powerful combat skills. Coupled with years of large military spending, the strength of the East Sea region cannot be underestimated. Therefore, today, with their status suddenly in decline, everyone in the East Sea region, from top to bottom, is determined to prove themselves. The arrival of Li Changgong has provided the opportunity to do so. 4 people sat at the negotiating table. Chapter 1955, The Land of Guishu. Li Changgong, the former supreme commander of the Northwest region who had fallen from grace, his distant uncle, the marshal of the Huashu Kingdom in the East Sea region, whose blood ties to him were already very thin, the war god Li Guangxiao, and the 2 most powerful mutants in the East Sea region, Black Tortoise and Vermilion Bird. They sat at the table and discussed an important matter. Black Tortoise was still the same as before, his spirit body maintaining the appearance of a teenager, looking extremely cold. Vermilion Bird, however, had changed a lot. After several cruel battles, many of her comrades had sacrificed their lives to protect her, which had made this woman become serious and unemotional. Even when facing her former big brother Li Changgong, the indifference on her face remained. Only her once fiery red hair had now turned completely ice blue, exuding a bone-chilling coldness that made people want to stay away from her. With Zhang Yi returning the Epsilon origin to Azure Dragon, she also took this opportunity to successfully advance to Epsilon. She was one of the few geniuses in the Huashu Kingdom and a natural Epsilon like Zhang Yi, Ho Tu, Gao Changkong, and the others. However, with so many people's hopes pinned on her, it took her until today to grow up. Many people were waiting for the Vermilion Bird's ice prison ability to shine on the battlefield. However, both she and Black Tortoise, who had already reached a supernatural ability index of 25,000, sat respectfully to the side, listening to Li Guangxiao and Li Changgong's conversation. Li Changgong and the others didn't care, but they were loyal to Li Guangxiao from the bottom of their hearts. In the army, there was only one way to gain the respect of others, and that was to show your strength. No matter how high your military rank is, if it is obtained through nepotism, you will not be respected from the bottom of people's hearts. Li Guangxiao was different. He was able to sit in his current position without the help of anyone else, relying entirely on his own abilities. No one could be assigned to such an important and dangerous position as the commander of the East Sea Region Navy based on connections alone. He was the kind of person who was called a tiger cub from a military family. When he was young, he did indeed rise quickly through the ranks because of his family's influence. But later, in many military conflicts, he used his own abilities to show others that he was not a useless waste of space living off his ancestors' achievements. He had been in office for more than 30 years and had participated in many international maritime affairs, including conflicts of varying scales. His famous battle is legendary. It was 20 years ago, when he had just become captain of the Shengyuan. At that time, there was a powerful pirate force in the Southeast Sea, which was actually a militarized armed group supported by Colombia. They often harassed the southeast coast and robbed merchant ships. After a long period of peace, small skirmishes were inevitable, as they were a test of strength. It was at that time that Li Guangxiao, with only one warship, directly attacked the pirates' naval base, destroyed 3 large warships in one fell swoop, and accurately torpedoed and killed the enemy's flagship and the pirate leader. After this battle, Li Guangxiao's fleet was awarded a collective first-class merit. The title of Naval War God was also established at that time. However, this was not the peak of Li Guangxiao's legend, but only the beginning. Since then, he has repeatedly distinguished himself in battle over the past 30 years and created many miracles of defeating a larger enemy with fewer troops. It was because of him that the southeastern waters of the Huaxu Kingdom remained stable. However, according to internal Navy records and jokes between Commander Li Guangxiao and his subordinates, the story of how he became famous is quite interesting. Commander Li Guangxiao recounted, "At that time, I had just become captain, and pirates were causing trouble and harassing merchant ships. I thought I would use the radar to my advantage and run over and lay some mines to get revenge on them. However, to my surprise, the day I arrived, they were holding a celebration. When we arrived, they set off fireworks, and from a distance, I mistook them for cannon fire, so I quickly turned the ship around and fled. But since we had already come this far, leaving like that would have been embarrassing. So I decided to deploy all the mines on the ship in the surrounding waters and randomly fired some torpedoes. To my surprise, the pirates panicked, thinking a larger force was coming to suppress them, and rushed out to engage us. In the end, we were incredibly lucky. The torpedoes sank the pirate leader's flagship, and in the chaos, the pirates collided with more torpedoes, sinking several of their ships. You see, many of the military legends in history have this kind of inexplicable legendary color, as if they were destined to happen. This news did not weaken Li Guangxiao's aura, but instead made people admire him even more. Even if it was part of his destiny, it still took tremendous courage to dare to single-handedly break into a pirate base with a warship. Perhaps this was heaven's reward for the brave. Li Changgong sat opposite Li Guangxiao and unfolded a 3-dimensional map. It was a map of the sea, with East Sea City at the center and surrounded by oceans of varying depths. Guishu is a place that has always existed in the myths and legends of the Huaxu Kingdom. It is said that all the sea water in the world converges there and then rushes in. There's also a legend that it is the dwelling place of lost souls. When I was commander of the Northwest region, I spent a lot of time investigating areas where underground ruins were suspected to exist. I have already determined the location of Guishu. And this place is definitely inhabited by a powerful ancient race. He pointed to his left, which was a region far away from the Huaxu Kingdom, close to Feizhou. This is where Guishu is located. Li Guangxiao glanced at the area his finger was pointing at and frowned. Then he crossed his arms and asked with a serious look, "You intend to join forces with us to go treasure hunting, right?" Li Changgong nodded. "To go to sea, we must rely on the power of the Navy. In the entire Huaxu Kingdom, apart from you, I'm afraid only chaos can do it." But a helpless smile appeared on his face, and the 3 people present all understood what it meant. If Zhang Yi participated in the upcoming operation, then they would all be reduced to supporting roles, and all the benefits would be swept away by Zhang Yi, while they would get nothing more than a few scraps. They had seen this outcome countless times before. Of course, they had no ill will towards Zhang Yi. He had shared many of the benefits he had gained from Fremons with them, greatly improving the machinery levels of the major regions. However, they didn't want to always be supporting actors. If they could obtain the resources of an underground civilization on their own, the East Sea region would have the opportunity to become one of the world's top powers.